So when we're talking about these tables, ladders and chairs, or hardcore matches, or all these kind of high spot matches that become so popular in recent years, are we saying that the issue with them is that it makes wrestling less believable as an athletic contest, or just that it's been done so often that it's unpredictable? It's now predictable.
It's becoming commonplace. Rather than, like I say, if you have something like a cage match, you've got to build up the story to it. Then all of a sudden, the pinnacle of this feud to end it is going to be this big, cage match or chain match or a TLC match or a ladder match. But if it's promoted in the way, that's it. Yeah. But if you're doing it all the time, it's so what?
In an ideal, Chris.
So as you said earlier, Flash, wrestling historically has always been built on gimmick matches. They've always been there, and they always have meaning at the end of feuds. To settle scores, and that people would make more money. People would spend the money for tickets. But now, when you're seeing TLC matches every show, or you're seeing chair shots every show, like Flash says, it loses meaning. And again, it does take about the credibility of wrestling when people are getting put through tables every week, and the next week they're wrestling again. Whereas 20 years ago, a guy gets put through a table, or a guy. Even recently, I watched something where Jerry Lawler in Memphis got crotched on a ring post and was out for a month. These days, the guy would be back at wrestling that night.
It's funny that you say that, because the thing I was just about to say, pardon me, is that I think the problem that there is that, and it goes exactly back to what Flash was saying before that, is that there are, when you say about the morals for the kids and stuff, it's not just the violence that worries me, because violence is, wrestling shouldn't have to be overly violent if it's done right. It's wrestling, and it's as violent as judo if it's done properly. A punch is violent, but then if it's done properly, Flash in my eyes has the best punch in British wrestling. Martin Stone's got a very good punch as well, and it's ironic that you inspired Martin. So, but the punch, like when I had this conversation with Flash actually about the punch, and when it's done once and you do, it's like a magic trick. But when I used to do magic, people say show us again, but you don't show them again because it's easy for them to see how the magic trick is done. One good punch that should be as effective as a chair shot. And the problem is with in my eyes, I guess an ideal world, if you have these two guys that. The problem is there's no consequences to people's actions. If you look at the people who are heroes in pro wrestling, a lot of them are not nice people. Their characters are not nice people. And when a rule is broken, there's no consequence. And even when a big stipulation match, in an ideal world, you should have these two guys who they have to have that stipulation match because there's no other option. And when they have that match, it should be for the following week on television. WWE do it well sometimes when the guy's bandaged up and stuff. Yeah. But that's to put over the bumps they took. What should be put over is the effect that fight has had on them. Yeah. They've gone from being pro wrestlers now to having a fight. These men are different. They've not been the same since he had that that unsanctioned match where it was. And I think that actually shows, man, like that kind of conflict, that kind of war is not good, whereas now it's all out. It's just like you said, there's no follow up to it.
Sorry, I was going to say, it's all getting back to what we were saying about when you get TLC matches all the time. Trouble is, once it's done all the time, everyone starts comparing. Well, that match wasn't as good as that match. Those two didn't perform that match as good as that. Yeah. So it totally loses that meaning. And all the smart fans who are interested then is comparing the matches, who done better. And that's what it's not all about, because then you're losing your story there. As you say with the punches and all this, one punch, that's all it needs. Because again, if you do it all the time, it loses its meaning. It's a cheat. Excuse me. In the olden days where you used to have the referee, they used to turn your referee and give that slide punch. Look at the reaction of the crowd.
Yeah. And I know it can still be done, because I saw Colt Cabana do it in a dark match with Matt Hardy in WWE, which is on YouTube, right? And he did that one punch on a show full of people punching, and because of the way he reacted and Matt Hardy reacted, and I actually emailed him and I was like, dude, you're a legend. I've just seen you do that, and I know it can be done. So you can make. I was watching the Hard Knocks documentary, very, really, really good documentary. It's definitely worth watching. And there's a clip of an Al Snow seminar, and he says basically, do you think I could ever possibly knock someone unconscious with this plastic head? No, I couldn't. but the people believe I can, which means I can make them believe anything if I'm committed enough to it. So when people go, it can't be done anymore, because people say to me, Alex, you know what you said about being a heel, I believe that it is possible to make people genuinely, you've just got to be really clever. And people say about, I hate work shoots, even with the letter, was it a work shoot? Because there was, the idea is, people said, the idea is that he messed up the finish of the match, which that's not the reason. There was something said that, about that we did. That was blocked out for another reason, but people that got misconstrued. But the people who are the people most annoyed about work shoots?
Smart fans.
Smart fans. Why?
Because they don't understand it.
Because
they don't know whether they're being worked.
What are they bringing to the table? What is their thing that they bring to pro wrestling?
They're smart.
Right. So what's happening when you work them? You're taking
smart.
away the thing.
Yeah.
So that's why, right? Which actually, if it's done properly, I always remember I wrestled Jack Xavier, and we had our last man standing match, and it was UK Hat Guy, who I always respect his opinions, probably the best fan reviewer on the internet, I always thought, and he said that was his favourite match in the FWA, but I think he probably still said the same thing everybody said. It was a shame that it had a screwy finish, but the point of the screwy finish was, I was the booker at the time, which most people knew, and the idea was to build up the drama to the point where how would you shortchange your smart fan audience in a dramatic match is by giving them that, so it frustrates them on two levels, and I think there's a way to do it, and it does get. But I think what happens is I've been guilty of it myself, and I know a lot of the guys are. They don't want to be. I think there's, for example, as a teacher now, I say to my guys, I will give a contract. I will give time and energy to the wrestler that comes to me and says, I want to wrestle under a mask, and I will turn up in that mask, and I will go home in that mask, and I will sit in that mask all day in the changing room, and I won't take it off. I don't care if the people in the wrestling community, because there's two bubbles, the wrestling community and the wrestling business. Most of the people in the community hate the people in the business. The people in the wrestling business don't really care what the people in the community say, because that, and the people in the business are the one, like Kendo Nagasaki, who would at best pull his mask up to here, or a heel that's such a good heel that he doesn't really care if the people like him or dislike him. He doesn't, because he's not in it to make friends. The people who are really his friends will know. Does that make sense? And I think that's where it's been lost. I think because we have become so, the fans are sort of telling us how to work. And I've been completely responsible for that. But I think it can be changed, but it takes a lot of commitment to your art.